sound good on like the stock Omnisphere preset, which is just like a saw synth or some shit. Like it's just the most basic stock sounding thing. If you can make a melody and chord progression sound good on that, when it's translated to a guitar, it's going to sound incredible.
Yeah.
You know? And then like all you have to do from there is just flex a little bit here and there, like to kind of add flair, if that makes sense. Like to keep, obviously, like a very large portion of Polyphia's fan base is guitar players, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So they're very easily entertained with the flexing parts. So as long as like the meat of the hook is there, the flexing parts are kind of like the cherry on top, if that makes sense.
Are the flexing parts as satisfying, or do you feel like sometimes you are like, I need to flex a little bit more here to cater, or do you not even think about your fans when you write music? It just sounds like the way you're describing it, you're like analyzing how your fans feel about the music.
That's kind of an afterthought. It's more so how do I feel about it.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes like, yeah, I mean, like ideally the flexes should be very satisfying in terms of like, okay, all I need to do is like take this 2 bars out here and replace it with very like a very creative fill per se,
mm-hmm.
you know, so that like when you lose like the familiarity, it's just, oh my god, what's happening? And then it fucking lands like very satisfyingly.
Yeah.
You know? Or like it lands in a place that you don't expect. A lot of the times what I like to do is like have shit like come like hit on like the 2 instead of the 1. So that like it just throws you off, but like it still like catches itself back in the pocket. Yeah, you know, things like that, like just like creative surprises that are like pleasant surprises, you know.
Totally. And
kind of keeps things interesting.
You sort of are kind of like the rapper of the guitar community. You know, it seems like some of that influence. I assume you listen to a lot of rap.
That's mostly what I listen to.
It feels like that kind of informs the riffs that you write in a way. And I think blending genres has been like an inevitable part of musical evolution forever. But what's interesting about Polyphia is not many instrumental bands have awesome music videos. They're usually just like a huge jackfest of like a guitar player standing in a dark room, or like some hell asylum with smoke and fans blowing everywhere. Which, as far as I'm concerned, only Steve Vai is allowed to do that.
Yeah.
But you guys have a really cool blend, not just with your music, but also the visual elements, like that I think makes hip hop so attractive. Is that something that is drawn for that, or are you just creative in that way? You see instrumental music videos in a different lens.
Yeah, like there's definitely a lot of hip hop influence, like visually. Right now, it's kind of, we're like in between albums right now, where we're like just kind of finishing up this new one. So everything prior to this kind of feels like I'm not so proud of it anymore as I once was when it first came out. You know?
Yeah, I hear that.
Like looking back on like a lot of just everything up till now kind of feels a bit cringe. But you know, like yeah, like visually, you know, I'm more proud of like the last 3 singles that we put out from the last album we put out. Not so much Lick But Don't Touch, because that was kind of just like a, hey, we need to drop some shit and let's just throw this together in a month and we'll have fun with it, and like drop it on April Fool's. So the video was like super wild and just nonsensical. Before that, there was definitely like a theme to it. Like for example, our song OD. It's like the term comes from like, I guess, New York, where they say OD a lot, which basically just means like very. Like, or it's just a lot, and that song has
extra
a lot of notes. Yeah, there's so many notes in that song. But we didn't spell it like ODEE, which is like, I guess, how they do that. but we just called it OD for like overdose, because like just prior to that I had like a fucking insane acid trip that was like just really bad. And I don't know, I don't think you can overdose on acid, but
I think it can just make you do things that are insane.
Yeah. I mean, I felt like I thought I was going to die, like very, in a not good way. It was not a good trip at all. Like I just remember like the next day when I was like, okay, thinking how grateful I am to just be alive, because like my mind was just not in a good spot the day before, like of just thinking like, things that aren't okay, like
yeah
to do, but like at the time it just seemed like a good idea, but thankfully everything was fine the next day. But I just remember like that was like one of the lowest points of my life, was that acid trip. And so I kind of like based the like OD music video off of that trip, where there's like a scene where I'm standing in a room filled with like butcher knives, and like there's
that
just
sounds horrifying.
Just like splattered all over the room, and I'm just like playing guitar in this room that like it's kind of just like all the like scenes from that video were just like shit I was tripping on really bad.
So do you ever even want to watch that music video?
I mean, yeah, it's cool. It's like the way we did it was cool and artistic. So like it's
Yeah.
And I often remind myself like, yeah, don't trip if you're not like in a good headspace in general. From that video. So it's a good thing. But it's definitely hip hop inspired. In terms of just doing things a bit different than like you normally would see in our kind of scene of music, I guess.
Totally.
Today's episode of Guitar Villains is brought to you by Guitar Super System. Are you tired of YouTube ads telling you that YouTube guitar lessons suck? Me too. I don't know about you, but somebody setting an acoustic guitar on fire or teaching crappy cover songs in front of a musty black curtain feels a little disingenuous to me. I'll get straight to the point. Join tens of thousands of other guitar players and visit GuitarSupersystem.com to join the most popular independent guitar learning platform on the internet. If you're a beginner, there's an entire curriculum called the Beginner's Corner just for you. If you're an expert, the music theory and technique curriculums reach the highest levels of mastery and are based on industry-standard learning methods I've used since graduating Berklee College of Music. If you're somewhere in the middle, you're actually the perfect candidate. The Choose Your Destiny approach allows you to cater your learning experience to exactly what you want to accomplish, whether that's improving your improvising, ear training, learning new techniques, songwriting, and more. You'll also have access to private live streams, lesson comments, and a community forum for feedback, as well as exclusive giveaways and new curriculum releases. The best part is everything that I just mentioned is included in one monthly subscription, and you can cancel anytime, or, like a lot of people do, upgrade your subscription to a yearly pass. Of course, you can also just learn guitar right on YouTube for free, because YouTube's guitar lessons don't suck if you know where to look. So check out GuitarSupersystem.com. Now, back to Guitar Villains.
Well, speaking of your music, I want to transition into a little game, and I call it Name Those Notes.
We need our homes back, but the Royal Army is strong and brutal.
The concept here... yeah, high production value on this podcast, Tim. The concept of Name Those Notes is pretty simple. I'll play you a quick sequence of guitar notes from music that you have recorded over the years, and you have to tell me what song those notes come from.
Okay, word. We'll see if we can do this, because there's like 50 plus songs that we have out.
Well,
so
I'll
do my best.
You may surprise yourself. We're gonna see how well you know your catalog and how well you can recognize your guitar playing, and it'll spur a little conversation about the music too. So we're gonna start with something easy that I think you'll get, and then we'll get progressively harder. Sound good?
Cool.
All right, here we go.
That is the worst.
That is indeed the worst from your album, The Most Hated. This is my...
difficult. You're like taking like snippets of licks that I could have just reused in any song.
Well, you got it right away though, so that's the thing about this. It's It's interesting. But this album is actually my favorite Polyphia album.
The most hated?
Yeah, it's kind of like if Rat-a-Tat had sex with Drake, and then somehow Guthrie Govan had an alien love child that nobody knew about, and that alien love child had sex with the Rat-a-Tat Drake baby.
Word. Yeah, that was definitely our most like experimental time, and some of like my favorite music as well.
I thought you were gonna say that's what we were going for. Yeah, man, that's it. You nailed it. Yeah, I really like that, but I've read a couple, you guys were afraid that maybe people wouldn't like it or something. I thought it was
at first it really wasn't. It was really not well received. I remember people just like kind of writing it off when we dropped it. Like there was absolutely zero like. I think maybe because it was an EP that people just didn't give a shit. But like there was a lot of like non-interest, and it took a year and a half of like touring on it for people to start really fucking with those songs, and it kind of caught up super late because at the time, it's like guitars and beats essentially that record. There's not too much real drums happening there,
Right.
And at the time there just wasn't like a lot of kind of progressive guitar playing over beats, and you fast forward to 3 years later to 2020, and like if you look on Instagram, that's all it is.
Yeah, it's great.
So,
I mean, you guys were definitely forerunners in that way. I think really influential.
Yeah, it's a little ahead of its time, but I'm proud of it. I like that record a lot.
Okay, awesome. Let's go on to the next one. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Here we go.
That's lit. That was easier.
Lit. I love that little hook. A lot of this earlier stuff, and this isn't your. Is this your first Polyphia release, or there was one
This
before?
would be our second full-length album. It's a remix that we remixed ourselves with the help of like Lo-Fi from our second album.
Yeah, a lot of this earlier stuff was like major oriented, like major key and really slippery, and like a reflection of the moment in time when it was released. And I don't know if you guys have purposely moved a little bit away from this style, as far as like the kind of happier major tonality, or what.
The thought process there was like we used to be like very deathcore death metal in the sense that we had a shitload of blast beats. This is like even before we were gent.
Right.
In like 2013, like when I was still in high school, like it was like we were a band and like we were playing like death metal, and so there was a lot of like this shit going on,
Yeah.
and just a lot of atonal stuff. And so we wanted to move so far away from that we cut out all the atonal things and only kept the melodic things. And then eventually we wanted to remove the blast beats and the double bass and the like any kind of heaviness. So we started just kind of focusing like on like pop structure and pop sensibility.
Mm-hmm.
And with that came, like, oh, we can't really do any like dark sounding stuff because it's going to be like metal. It's going to be like heavy, and we didn't really want to like be in that, And then as we like got better at what we were doing, we realized we can make dark sounding shit without it being metal. And like Goat was kind of the first thing like that where it was like dark without being metal because it was mostly like trap influenced,
Right.
And it was just a difficult thing for me to kind of figure out how we were going to like implement like technical guitar playing into like dark, not as melodic trap, because like it's easy to play anything with like lots of chords and lots of like
will be there in 30 seconds.
melody to latch onto, like with guitar. If you're just playing along to like a radio song, it's very easy to do that when there's lots of chords to latch onto. But when you only have like one or two to bounce back off of, and they're not very melodic sounding, it's super difficult. So once we realized we can do that, then we started switching to more like of just different vibes that we wanted to hit, because we realized it didn't have to be categorized into, oh, this is metal sounding or whatever.
Totally. Yeah, that restriction of the harmony kind of blooms some interesting results that you guys, just like you outlined, is that's a really interesting thought process. I didn't think of it that way.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's move on to another one. Ready?
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go.
I thought that would be a nice little segue into to talk about. Congrats on the most gawked at riff of the guitar community in the past year, Tim. You did it.
Thank you. That wasn't really my intention when making that riff,
No,
but
of course not.
I'm glad that people gawk at it.
Yeah, I mean, this tune perfectly captures your guitar playing, what I think is unique about it. And I want to go out on a limb here, even though like it doesn't sonically sound like it in any way. Are you as into Jimi Hendrix as I am? Okay.
I fucking love Jimi Hendrix.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I couldn't find. I do research for these shows, and I was trying to find. I couldn't really find as much stuff on you as certain other people, but you know, some people are like, yeah, Hendrix is great, but like, I'm really into him, and you know, I just hear a lot of his tendencies in the combination of rhythm and lead work in your playing, in like where the melodic and harmonic pieces of the phrases fall together. You know, it just seems like
that's a huge compliment to me. He is my absolute favorite guitar player of all time, and I look up to him in every way possible. You know, he was pretty much, you know, like a lot of people will hate me for saying this, and this will probably be one of those dumbass headlines, but he was pretty much like, you know, Drake back then. You know what I mean? Like how Drake is now, where he headlines fucking everything and he's like one of the biggest artists in the world. Like Hendrix was that, like just as big as it gets, and he was a guitar player, you know, like with those songs, like.
Oh yeah, I would take it. Okay, I might actually make some fucked up headlines, but I've been toying with this idea, and you just kind of gave me the means to say it. But I have been thinking about how Hendrix maybe is responsible in part or entirely for hip hop, because I never heard somebody talk over like rock songs. You know, like how he would kind of sing, sing, whatever. I don't know if that existed before him in a worldwide way. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, dude. And I think like the embodiment of Hendrix was just like. Just Hendrix was like the embodiment of like cool. Yeah. Like the word cool, like all of its connotations, like it was just cool as fuck. Like the coolest thing you could be was like Hendrix, you know. And then like I think like hip hop is taken, you know, like that's kind of how I view hip hop. Is like it's just one of the coolest things, like, you know, vibe wise and everything. And like Hendrix I just love Hendrix so much, man. Like I think about him in that way of like he was like the rappers back then. Yeah. You know, like what the rappers are now is like what Hendrix was back then. Just a fucking like the coolest superstar you could be, because like it wasn't like bubblegum. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like the most like.
It was raw. I mean,
easy to sell shit. It was like, are you experienced? Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? Like once you listen to it, it's like, oh shit, I'm experienced now. You know, it was just the coolest fucking thing. I admire Hendrix so much.
Yeah, I can't wait for the Hawaii concert to come out. Have you seen that? The Maui Live in Maui concert that's coming out in October. It's all this unreleased.
I will check that out for sure.
Yeah, it's all this like super high definition unreleased footage of a concert that he played. I'm really looking forward to that. All right, man. One more song here, and this will close out the segment. You ready? Mm-hmm. Here we go.
Off a new album. I think I'm actually like know our catalog way too well for anything to trip me up.
Yeah, man, you got that right. So I don't know what that's called. I just found it on your YouTube channel, and it's like a teaser for the fourth album. And that's all I have. Let's use this as a transition to talk about whatever you can with your what you guys are working on currently.
So that song is done. I like wrote an email the other day to our team talking about maybe we should just drop it, like, and give the fans something to like chew on while we're finishing the rest of the album. I think we're gonna be a little more strategic than that, but
just
yeah,
do it.
That song is really cool.
You can drop it in my inbox. That's fine.
Word, I might. Yeah, so Wes Houck is on that song a bit.
Okay.
He helps with some of the writing there. It takes a turn like halfway through into like a vibe we haven't really hit before, which is I don't know the term for it. It's almost like it's not tango and it's not like, I don't know. It's like a specific chord progression that's like we have not like hit that kind of vibe before, and it gets really cool. But I'm incredibly stoked on that song, and I think our fans are going to dig it quite a bit.
Well, it had kind of like a Latin, like bossa nova feel.
Yes, bossa nova is the word. So like it gets really bossa nova, like in the second half. It kind of like beat switches a bit.
Right on.
And it gets really bossa nova. And it like gets hard bossa nova too, where you're like, while also still bossa nova-ing, you know?
There's that genre blending. That's cool. I can't wait to hear that. Is there a name for it, can you say? Or it's just the bossa nova, we can leave it at that?
So currently it's just called Batch. That's the working title. It's not like at all what we're going to call it. But the reason it's called Batch is because I started that riff on a session with Heavy Mellow. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he's a guitarist producer who
was it?
He's worked.
What was the name?
Heavy Mellow.
Heavy Mellow.
He like plays with Melanie Faye a lot, and like he's done like a lot of cool things. He did like a bunch of stuff on like Halsey's Badlands, and just plays like he plays guitar and produces like really well. So like we're doing this session together. And we're not really, making anything for any particular artist. And we sat down. I'm like, you want to give me some chords? Because he has like the coolest chord ideas ever. And he just he gave me like 4 chords, and then I was like, okay, those are fire. And then I added some more chords to it, and then just like built that riff kind of just right there. And because I was doing it on the nylon, I was like, damn, this is kind of like Bach a little bit, but not really at all. But I was just like, I need to like hit save and call it something so that like my files don't end up just on my desktop,
right.
Like after every take of this. So I just like called it Batch, as like a shitty way of saying Bach. So that's
cool.
That's the working title story there.
All right, well, we'll see what it's called whenever this thing drops. I want to talk a little bit about your technique. My audience is starving to get a little peek inside your mind when it comes to some of the really cool guitar work you've done over the years. I know you were forced by your parents to play violin as a very young child, which I've heard you mention you hated. But I think it's interesting the sort of orchestral tendencies that you exhibit, and you're very much a fingerstyle player with some hybrid picking and traditional picking woven in, but it's almost like a violin, a piano, and a bass had sex, and then that offspring had sex with an 8-string guitar, and your skills were born. There's a lot of sex in this podcast. I don't know why.
It's a sexy podcast.
Yeah, I don't know. Is this something that you think about, like your playing style? Like, how would you describe it?
See, it's a hard question, but I don't necessarily think of it in like a classical sense like that. I kind of have had a very hard time bridging the two instruments in terms of like, I guess really the only thing that kind of like I benefited from the violin is just general finger dexterity. But in terms of like any crossover there, I'm able to like sight read violin music like very well. I have no idea how to fucking do that on a guitar. and I can't even tell you like what the hell, what note that is, like, unless I was like that's fucking B and then count it down. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so I have absolutely no knowledge of what the hell I'm doing on a guitar. So, you know, I kind of approach it almost like, if I had to like do like a comparison like that to like a classical instrument, I'd say piano is like the closest thing, because like a lot of the way that I build my riffs are starting with chords, so the left hand, and then the right hand would be the melody, and then playing both things at the same time like a pianist would. So yeah, I guess that's the like closest thing. But I do try and like incorporate, you know, because when you do things like that, it ends up being like pretty mathy.
When you think about it,
that's not a genre that I necessarily identify with as math rock, because everything that we do is in 4/4, and there's no odd time to anything that we do. But just by sheer like doing that, it's kind of math rocky in that way. But I try and implement like classic guitar playing into it, like the Hendrix type stuff. Into those kind of riffs to like make them less like peggable into like a thing, you know?
Yeah, I don't know who said it. I think it was Frank Zappa. I could be wrong, but I think he said the most complicated time signature is 4/4 because of what all the different
things you can do with 4/4
accents that you can do. Like when I was in school, I took an ear training class, and every class my teacher would try and make us, you know, guess what but determine what the time signature was. And every time he would fuck us up with a 4/4, you know, something or other. And so just writing music in 4/4 isn't any sort of like knock. You can do so much with that.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if you're just feeling it, you know.
I was super surprised to learn, you know, like just recently, like a few months ago, Tosin Abasi taught me how to thump.
Those who refuse to
And
believe were killed.
like I'm like learning this technique from him, and like we're kind of like going over like examples of like animal songs. And I was super surprised to learn that like a lot of those are in 4/4, you know, and just they just have like odd meters and things like that. I don't even know what the fuck I'm talking about, to be honest, but you know, it just makes it sound crazier than it is, you know?
Yeah.
So
not common.
yeah.
I have a couple of wind down questions as we near the end here, Tim. What is the hardest thing about the guitar, and what is the easiest thing about the guitar?
The hardest thing about guitar is playing good. I'm just kidding. Is finger tone. It's something that like you have to have years and years in your hands, or like not years, but like time spent, and it's the only instrument that has, you can do finger tone with both hands. You know what I mean? Because like you know, piano is like a percussive type instrument, and violin is you can do finger tone. You know, like when you vibrato like this on a violin. But there's, you know, when you're like plucking it, you're really not getting like a pizzicato. You're really not getting too much of your finger tone there. But on a guitar, you know, depending on like how you pluck it, or like how you know, use these fingers, or even tapping, you can vibrato like with your right hand. So many things, you know. And like there's a lot of something that I am actively thinking about when I play, and I'm just trying to improve on like so much, is just like kind of closing my eyes and listening as I'm playing. And it's just like, if I didn't see a visual, like would this be good? You know what I mean?
Right.
And just kind of try and listen to just like make sure that like my tone in my hands, like not anything to do with the guitar, the pickups, or the actual tone that I'm playing through, but like the tone in my hands. Does it sound sweet? Does it sound pleasant? Like, you know. And I'd always try and play on like a tone that is fairly revealing, so that I can like kind of keep track of like that. And then the easiest thing about guitar I guess it's like a fairly like easy beginner instrument. You know, like if you wanted to just like pick up an instrument like for whatever reason, and like you had like a month to like prepare, like you could play a full song by the end of the month, and like it would be fine. You know, like depending on if you're just gonna play chords or like whatever. You know, just some like basic shit, and like maybe like sing along. Like it's a pretty, you know, good beginner instrument, and in the same way that like piano is too, I guess. Like if you're just gonna be playing some like very simple things, you know.
Totally. That's interesting what you said about playing with a revealing tone, like not hiding behind any walls of delay and reverb or distortion.
Yeah.
That's good discipline. That's a good disciplinary tactic to employ for any guitar player.
Yeah, and even like, you know, playing without a tone, just unplugged or like with an acoustic or just anything, you know, like does it sound good? Does it sound pleasing? Like and with finger tone comes like, you know, like vibrato and slides and fucking all sorts of things. And like so many times I catch myself just being sloppy as all hell when it comes to those like nuances. And it's just, you know, you look at like Steve Vai, for example, it's just the way he has complete control and mastery of the instrument, like and like he can make it sing, and he can make it fucking squeal, and he can make it scream, like all within the same 10 seconds, 5 seconds, you know. There's so much like emotion that's you're able to like convey like with your hands, and it just comes from time on the neck, you know.
Absolutely.
And there's like, you know, you could be like the fastest player on earth, but fucking your finger tone could just suck cock and just sound bad, you know.
It's all about the finger tone, and honestly, vibrato is my primary technique that I harp on. Anybody asks me like, what's the most important thing to practice? It's like bend that note, because you can play total just terrible shit and then end on this amazing climactic bend, and everyone remembers that bend. But if you play like the most technically satisfying passage and then you bend this shitty like out of tune vibrato, it's like, oh, that guy's not that good.
It's super revealing, you know, like a fast like kind of like, you know, shit ass vibrato. Like it's super revealing. And you know, like I said, I catch myself all the time being sloppy as hell. It's like, dude, I'm so much better than this, I promise. Like, like especially when it comes to, like I said, the slides and the vibratos and the bends, you know, like those are difficult techniques, and like, you know, it requires like extreme mastery of your shit to like get good at that, I guess. But
totally. What's your favorite airplane album? You're flying on an airplane. What album do you like to listen to?
Dude, maybe like there's like a few that I cycle through, but like my favorite 3 would probably be Nothing Was the Same by Drake, Yeezus by Kanye, and then what the fuck is that one called? I think it's Rodeo. The Travis Scott album, like I guess kind of his like breakout album. But yeah, those 3, I absolutely love those.
Delightful. We got Build a Band here, okay? So you are in a band, and there are 4 other people, living or dead. Who would you want in that band? You and 4 others.
Oh man. So no singers?
No, it could be a singer too, whoever you want. It could be a triangle player.
Alright. The first and like most important like person I would pick would be a producer.
Okay.
Just to kind of have a master plan of like what the hell we're gonna be doing, you know?
Yep.
So producer wise, I guess I could pick like any legendary producer, but I don't really want to. I would pick Lido. And he's not like that. You probably don't know who I'm talking about, but
I don't know who Lido is, but you can fill us in.
Yeah, he's incredible. I guess he kind of started like as like I maybe like on SoundCloud as like a future-based kind of producer, but then moved like into like doing like pop records and like big records, and then kind of just like, I don't know, he makes like really amazing stuff, and I identify with it a lot musically because it's interesting and you know, there's parts where it can get technical, but he keeps it like, you know, the soul and just the meat of the shit is just good melody, good rhythm, good fucking everything is dope. So I guess I would pick Lido as the first, and he's like a multi-instrumentalist too, who like kills it on so many things.
The best producers are.
Yeah. So that like he'd be a very strong asset to have. And then I guess I could start building the band from there. So I would pick a rapper for sure. I'd pick Drake just because like I would love to like have his, you know, lyricism be kind of the focal point. And then musician wise, guitar wise, I would love to have someone that could just shit all over me, but would do the things that like me and Leo want them to. So maybe like Guthrie or somebody, just like.
I was thinking him too.
Just so insane with it, you know, like
no knock on you, but like that, if you said shit all over and then insert anyone, then Guthrie's the choice.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like technically he could do anything.
Yeah.
I mean,
and he's also like the most humble dude, as far as I know.
Yeah, and you know, like he plays with like Hans Zimmer and like will do whatever like Hans needs him to do for the music. You know what I mean? Yes. So I think he would be like a great asset to have in the band. Drummer, I would pick. I don't know that many drummers, but maybe like I'm trying to remember names that my drummer likes. His favorite drummer. I think his favorite drummer is Eric Moore.
Eric Moore.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's you, Eric Moore, Lido, Drake, and Guthrie Govan.
Right, but we need a bass player, so Thundercat.
Thundercat, you added it. Okay, I'll give you that. I'll give you a sixth member of Thundercat.
Yeah, so you know that would be like my, I guess, dream thing. But I would love to, you know, like sit in the back of the room. Yeah. Kind of what I feel like Kanye does, where he just has like the best people on earth come into a room and he's just like, I want you to do this, and then it's a Kanye song, you know? Like, yeah. That's what I would love. It's just to sit in the back of the room, not have to do anything other than say what I want, and it happens. And then when I don't know what I want, I can rely on everyone else, you know, to like help me figure out what it is that I want.
Yeah, it's like a football coach who's like, I just surround myself with people who are smarter than me. It's like, it's a winning formula for sure.
Dude, that's the dream, man, is to just like get like, you know, when you're like Kanye famous, you can have anyone in the world you want, like make any kind of music you want them to make, and that like you could just, it's just the coolest thing. Okay. So that's like my dream, I guess.
Finally, to loop in your guitar supervillain alter ego, I have one final question for you, Tim. What do you believe about guitar that most guitar players would think is crazy? And this could be like a hard truth that guitar players need to hear, or something that you know that others don't, or maybe a misconception about the instrument, or whatever you want. What do you believe about the guitar that others wouldn't believe?
This is a hard one. I don't know. Let me sit here and think about this.
Deliver your truth. Speak the gospel.
You don't even have to be good at guitar to make like dope music with a guitar. You know, it like I see this time and time, like I work with so many producers, and a lot of them do not play instruments, but like they're like geniuses when you give them a fucking, you know, keyboard and a DAW. And I've seen them write like incredible guitar riffs just on fucking keyboard, you know. And then, like, if you were to give that to a guitar player and say, hey, make this like good, like, it would turn out incredible. So yeah, I mean, like, you don't even have to be good at guitar to like make good guitar music, you know, which is kind of ties in back into that bullshit that I said for that fucking interview. It's like there's so many people like trying to be good at guitar that aren't making good music, you know. And it's like you have the whole thing fucking backwards, dude. Like,
The priorities are flipped.
yeah, it's like, again, music is the means to the end. Or sorry, music is the end and guitar is the means. You know what I mean? It's like the tool, it's the car that you're traveling in to get there.
Yeah,
You know?
totally. Perfect analogy. Well, as we wind down here, Tim, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to be on Guitar Villains. It's been a blast to talk to you. We will look forward to what treacherous plots you devise next in your musical endeavors.
Word, well, I appreciate it, and I don't know, I feel like I should do like an evil laugh or something to close it out, but I'm not gonna do that, so just pretend like I am.
Alright, I'll insert like a Lich King noise here.
Yeah, fire.
Welcome to Guitar Villains. I'm your host, Tyler Larson. Why Guitar Villains, you ask? Well, because villains are cooler than heroes. It's just a fact. This is a podcast by guitar players for guitar players, and over the course of this series, we'll talk to some of the most innovative and creative minds in the guitar community, find out what makes them tick, and find out how we can become better guitar players ourselves. Thank you for watching the video podcast here on YouTube, and you can also listen to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever else you get your podcasts. Today's guitar villain is Joe Satriani. Known in his truest form as a literal alien, Satriani's music can certainly transport you to various places in the universe. And after paving the way for so many guitar players after him, Satch is still the master of the six-string sonic highway we're all driving down. With dozens of Grammy nominations and what seems like an endless catalog of music, Joe is constantly innovating and always inspiring in the realm of guitar. And if you know me, you know how pumped I am to have Joe on this episode of Guitar Villains. Welcome to Guitar Villains, the show where we deconstruct and decode the guitar. And Joe, I feel like we're sort of kindred spirits in that we both left our budding football careers, which totally would have panned out and we would be in the NFL today.
Oh yeah.
Instead we became guitar players. But I was actually a soccer player in high school and I was recruited to be the kicker. Turned out I was good, and the end of the season I had a choice to either go play football in like Gainesville or Poughkeepsie, New York, or go to music school in Boston. I don't know about you. I think I made the right choice.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Yes, yeah. Well, that's good though. I mean, you know, sports is great. Music is so physical that anything that you can add to being in touch with your body is great, I think. I think it always helps the musical experience and being a musician, being in touch with every little muscle and joint is so important. And so, yeah, if you can dance or play soccer, whatever it is, that's great. As long as you don't
We have some
hurt yourself.
athleticism about us, right?
Yeah, small movements, very tiny movements, but still, it's about connecting your heart and your mind to your body, you know, and that's really what it is, and it's using all your senses, and but ultimately the guitar doesn't play itself, you know what I mean?
Right, indeed. And for context, anybody who doesn't know, you were 14 years old, your friend, while you were about to head out to football practice, told you that Jimi Hendrix had passed away, and you immediately went and quit the team and vowed to become a guitar player. And this story is well documented. I don't want to rehash it, but the one thing I want to clarify is you didn't yet play the guitar when you made that decision. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, I had only, you know, I'd been a drummer since the age of 9. I took lessons, I think, for about 3 years. My teacher was a jazz guy, and but in the course of those 3 years, I started to notice that I just wasn't feeling like I was really connecting 100%. And I just thought, you know, when you're a kid, you're so impatient, and I was very impatient with the lack of my progress. And I just thought, boy, everybody sounds better than me, you know. And then, you know, as you start to get into 10, 11, 12, you really start getting distracted by fun, sex, whatever it is that's going on. And so I've tried to remember, like, you know, what was my thought process, but I think it was more of a overwhelming feeling than anything else. It seemed logical to me. I had quite the time that night at dinner convincing the family that that's what I was going to do. I literally, you know, announced at dinner, stood up and said, okay, everybody, you know, and this is what's going to happen. And there was like a moment of silence followed by everybody yelling and screaming.
You spoke it into existence.
Yes. But yeah, it's funny. I always thought that the feeling of loss was the biggest thing I felt. Like, I couldn't understand, how am I going to get through the next week of school without having Jimi Hendrix in my life, you know, and that's how important music was to me. And I just thought, well, then you have to provide the music. I wasn't thinking I'd ever be as good as him, or I'd replace him, or any of that. It was nothing logical or concrete. It was more like an emotion that there was loss and I had to fill it, and that was the only thing that seemed to make sense, was to play guitar. And then, of course, I found out how hard it was, and how much it hurt my fingers, and you know, like every other beginner, I just sucked, and it was just like, wow, how do I get from nowhere to square one at least?
Well, that's a good lesson for everybody. Joe Satriani once sucked at guitar, so you never have to feel bad. So we do things a little bit differently on this show, Joe. We're going to play some games. I'm going to try to get to the bottom of what makes you tick as a musician, and hopefully you'll have a great time. And maybe the next time touring is back on the menu and you're coming through Nashville, we can link up if you're coming through, maybe like the Ryman or something like that. I don't know.
Oh, that'd be great to play there again. Yeah.
So this show is called Guitar Villains because villains, I think, are cooler than heroes. I've always found the characters a little deeper and more complex, more memorable. So the first thing I want to ask is, out of all the movie or comic book villains out there, who would you say you identify with the most? And this could be simple as appearance or as nuanced as a character trait. And if you want, I know it's kind of a strange question, I can give you my answer for which villain I think you're most like, and you can respond with a different choice or agree.
Well, yeah, let me hear what you think. That's pretty funny. I'd like to hear what, you know, your idea of what my hero or villain is.
Okay. So there's the obvious, like, oasis in the desert, you know, the no bones about it answer, which is, of course, the Silver Surfer. But here's the thing. I don't really consider him a villain. Oh, look, you got a little figurine right there. I don't really consider...
It's kind of weird when you put the two together. I mean, one of them's a little bit bigger than the other, but you can see.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Striking similarity, right?
There is a resemblance there. But I don't know about you. I don't think he's really a villain at all. Plus, that's way too easy of a comparison. It feels like a shortcut, which isn't how I roll. So, in my opinion, your real supervillain alter ego is Mr. Johnson from a 1957 film called Not of This Earth. And Mr. Johnson, in case you don't know, he's an alien from the planet Divana, and he has a sensitivity to high decibel and frequency levels sounds, and he looks like a human, but he's conspicuous only for his silted, informal way of speaking and his sunglasses, which he wears even in the dark. And the reason he wears these sunglasses is because he has to hide his white blank eyes, his blank stare. he uses these eyes to kill his victims by burning through their eyes into their brains. And he removes the blood of his victims using a system of tubes and canisters that he keeps in an aluminum attaché case, which may be like a guitar case, who knows. So we don't insinuate true evil on guitar villains, of course. This is all, I don't think you're actually a vampire alien. But these resemblances are quite uncanny. Like, first of all, the sensitivity to high frequency sounds, I think, I'd say out of any guitar player, you've played the largest gamut of low and high frequencies thanks to that trusty whammy bar. So you've done all the way down low and all the way, like it may be as high as any guitar player or as low as they've ever gone. And you clearly know what to listen for. And the sunglasses at all times of day, I mean, that's basically your calling card, and you might be the only person in the world who can get away with doing that. And of course, the film title, Not of This Earth, it's the name of your first record. So that's what went into the mindset. That might be your villain doppelganger.
I could do that. You know, it's, if people haven't seen the film, but this is what this is basically the production effects were pretty good. They basically, he'd take off his glasses and you heard, which was, you know, the sound effects guy crumpling some paper off camera. But
so you know that film?
Oh my God! All right, so here's the story. It's just such a funny story. So
okay, so I thought this was a deep cut, but you got it.
No, when I was in high school, I was in a couple of different bands, and a few of us were in bands together, different things. Anyway, one of my friends, Michael Arculio, was a Beatle fanatic, and he was a drummer, and he wanted to just have a Beatle band, right? And so, meanwhile, I'm the singer in the band, and myself, and the bass player as well. We were in our own band that did quite well, playing Zeppelin, Sabbath, Stones, that whole kind of thing. And anyway, so, but we're in this band with Michael because he's a cool guy, and we all love the Beatles. So we're playing Beatles songs upstairs in his room every day, rehearsing like crazy. And every once in a while, we go down to the kitchen. His mom makes us sandwiches or something, and there's a little TV. This is like ancient history, but anyway, back then when there was no cable and just a couple of channels going, and there'd always be the low rent channel on. I think it was Channel 9 on Long Island, and or 13, no 9. I think it was Channel 9, and they're showing B and C movies all the time. Anyway, so this one movie is on like all the time for those few months that we're rehearsing, and it happens to be the movie Not of This Earth. And the four of us memorized the entire movie, because every time we took a break, we'd go down, the TV would be on, and there'd be the movie. So we just adopted the script into our day-to-day language. And
That's awesome.
okay, so fast forward years later, I relocated out to the West Coast. I'm living in Berkeley, California. I get this idea to make the leap from doing a little avant-garde EP to a full-length album, and I thought, I want to come up with a title, and I had this song that I called Not of This Earth, and I thought, if I make this the title of the album, maybe my friends will see it, and they'll know where to get a hold of me, because I was putting out the record on my own label, and my apartment's address was printed on the back of the sleeve, So it's the only reason why I did it was just to say hi to the three other guys, because I lost contact.
Put it out into the universe.
So I just very innocently thought, I'm nobody. I haven't got a career in instrumental music. I'm not even trying. And so I just did it as a joke, right? So then, fast forward, Steve Vai insists on sending the album to a guy named Cliff Coltrane at a small label out of New York who just signed him for his Flexible record. And Steve's idea was, if they sign me for Flexible, which is the weirdest record ever, he said, they're definitely going to sign you. So I said, well, you can go ahead and send it to him. He won't call me back. Anyway, he did. I got signed. The next album that I did for them was Surfing with the Alien, and then that's when the whole career took off. But I still had this album. It did work, because my friends on the East Coast did see me and the title of the movie and everything. They got the joke, and they called me up. So that was the only reason why I did it. So it's so funny that you should just bring that up, because It is not a well-known film.
That
it
is
never
really
won
weird. I mean, I
any
do a
award.
lot of research
It
for
has
this
sound
show.
effects like this
Yeah.
for the burning of the brain and everything. But I still, every once in a while, I say "Gandolila," and I have the script to memorize.
Jeez.
I identified with the really young vacuum cleaner salesman. Remember?
Right,
And he says,
right.
I can turn flip-flops in your.
I found as
in your
much of it
face."
as I could on YouTube to try and piece it because I couldn't get it on Amazon. And, yeah, it seems like an interesting film. I'll find a way to view the whole thing at one point or another.
Yeah, you'll have a good laugh.
That's great. So first things first, Joe, I have a couple softball lobs for you. I called this segment Burning Questions.
Yes.
So these are rapid fire questions that if you were to
Okay.
conduct a live master class where anyone could ask you questions about anything they want regarding music, these are the questions they would ask you, which don't totally matter, but they must be answered.
Okay.
What gauge pick do you use?
Oh, extra heavies most of the time. If I'm playing melodies, solos, it seems like the extra heavy pick just makes everything sound a little bit thicker up and down the neck. And that's what I've noticed about pick thickness is the thinner the pick is, the more it reveals its mass as you traverse the strings and the fretboard. If I'm strumming, I might go to a medium. If I'm strumming an acoustic guitar that's supposed to be just part of a large group of instruments in a track, I'll use a thin pick. And that's about it. But I keep a lot of picks on hand.
Great.
Different kinds. But mainly it's extra heavy.
What gauge strings do you use?
Now that's interesting. So for years I tuned to 440 and I used 9s. That was kind of like my thing. Then about 10 years ago, when I got together with Chad, Michael, and Sammy to form Chickenfoot, Sammy at the time was doing E flat, and because he and Michael had been with Van Halen for so long, and they kind of adopted that tuning, and so I thought, okay, I'll drop down, and then after about 6 months, my tech and I, we just were getting so frustrated that we had 440 guitars with 9s, and then we had these E flat guitars with 10s on them, and I said, you know what, I need to make a decision here. Mm-hmm. So I just said, let's just make everything 10s at E flat, and we'll just stay there. That way I can go from my gig to Chickenfoot, and I don't have to, have a whole separate set of guitars. So it did make life easier, and I started to notice that, again, traversing up and down, playing melodies and solos, I did gain something in terms of thickness, maybe, of tonality. I had to work a little harder to get strings to sort of crack open and sound thinner, which is really important when you're trying to kind of vocalize a melody. And because if you don't, then it just sounds like you're playing scales or something. It's a particular problem for electric guitarists. But recently, since I've been home a lot, and I'm the one changing all the strings.
Yeah.
Usually, on tour, Mike does everything. I get new strings on all the guitars every night. Spoiled, absolutely spoiled rock star.
Especially with those Floyd Roses, it's not necessarily an easy task all the time.
It isn't, and Mike does an amazing job. Keeps me really in tune. So I started fooling around because I've been doing a lot of sessions for different people, and I started to listen to their tracks, and I'm thinking, my thing doesn't necessarily fit, so what can I do to fit? So sometimes I put 11s or 12s, and sometimes I put 9s, sometimes I go all the way to 8. So the last 2 or 3 days I've been working on something for another musician who's doing an orchestral thing, and it's sort of like orchestra with some techno elements, but it's real orchestra. And I thought, well, this is kind of interesting because the electric guitar's got to fit in this massive thing. Not only do you have this beautiful sonic spread of a full orchestra, and we're talking, London Philharmonic, but we're also talking where he's adding elements that are software based,
Right.
And so I'm thinking, okay, so I'm somewhere in between the analog and the digital. And so I've got two 7-string guitars, one with 10s, one with 9s, one at 440, one at E flat. I've got melody guitars with 10s at E flat and melody and solo guitars with 8s at 440. And they're all occupying the session right now, kind of next to each other. And it's been a bit confusing, for the fingers. It takes me a few minutes to remind myself, like when I go to 8s, to relax a little bit.
Yeah, the bending especially, and yeah.
Yeah, but the payoff is the expressiveness. And if I didn't tell you, like if I was playing you a track and I didn't tell you it was 8s, you wouldn't guess it. And because, guitar players were very sensitive to the tactile response, but actually the audience is hearing something entirely different. And so that's what I've been toying with. There's really a world of expressiveness in there, just playing around with your string gauges. It's really interesting. What you can do. A little side note, if anybody read that Pete Townsend book, there's a great little nugget of information in there about how he was taught by, I forget the guy's name, Lonnie Donegan or Dwayne Eddy or somebody, to take his G string and make it a B string, and that way when he does double stop bends, they move in pitch pretty much closer to each other than if it had been a regular G and a B. I thought that was really remarkable. Just
cool.
For a little thing you can do. It's almost like Telecaster players going to a higher gauge for their first strings to get rid of that typical Fender Tele string buzz that's always on the first string for some reason, So yeah, you should play around with your gauges. I guess that's the short answer.
All right, a lot of insight there on the string gauges. What is your number one guitar?
It's probably that guy over there, the chrome guitar.
Okay.
Although the MCR over there, that's the one with the 8. So that's 440 at 8s, and the chrome guitar, that's number 3. It was not supposed to be my main chrome guitar. I basically got 3 at the start of last year. One was the prototype of the JS1CR that I approved, and number 2 was the first one that came out of the factory, so to speak, and I took those on the tours with me, so they got played and banged up like crazy on the Experience Hendrix tour, which is where I got the t-shirt.
Yeah, that's a
sweatshirt.
cool shirt right there.
And
so
but
number 3
was left at home.
That was like the
'cause
perfect porridge or something. There was like, first one's too hot, too cold. This one's just right.
It surprised me. I just thought it was the one that didn't feel right, so I left it at home, and then every time I come back from the tour, I would pick it up and use it to record demos for shape-shifting. And then I go back out on tour, and I play number 1 and number 2 every night, and come back home, play number 3, and then as I started to send the demos out, everyone was telling me, like, hey, whatever guitar you used on that demo, man, bring that. That thing sounds great.
Yeah.
And so it was just like one of those things, like the guitar that you ignored turned out to be your favorite guitar. It's harder to play for some reason. I don't know why, and I left the action really high, which I don't normally play with high action, but it seemed to it helped me sort of calm down the note quantity a bit, and the shape-shifting album, I didn't want it to be a shred fest. I really wanted to concentrate on the melodies